ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೋಗೋದು, ದುಡಿಯೋದು, ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರೋದು, ಅಡುಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಹಾಕೋದು. ಇದೇ 32 ವರ್ಷನೂ ಇದೇ ನಡೆದೈತೆ. ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ನಿರ್ಮಲಾ, ಏಜು 60.
मैं गायत्री हूँ और मेरा ಏಜ್ 36 ಏಜು. ಗಾರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಪಿಡಿಂಗ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಶೋಭಾ, ನಾನು ಗಾರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
These are women migrant workers who work punishing hours in ready-made garment factories. Part of the fast fashion supply chain of some of the biggest global clothing brands. This sector contributes over 40% to textile exports, employing over 12 million people.
And we all know that the ready-made garment industry is a rapidly growing sector. Asia dominates in garment production. In India itself, there are about 12 million people employed in the ready-made garment industry, and there are about 5 lakh workers in Karnataka. What we see is that job opportunities are limited in rural and semi-rural areas, and many women, migrate to find better job prospects and higher wages compared to what they can earn in their home regions. The reason that most of the workers told us for migration was most often economic reasons, especially with the interstate migrant workers reporting that they had moved to Bangalore in search of work. Their husbands also are from largely poor or landless agricultural families.
Much of the investment in industry now goes into capital intensive and knowledge intensive sectors. So even those sectors which were labor intensive, such as for example automobiles or pharmaceuticals or any sector, engineering instruments, any sector has become capital intensive, automatized, more high technology, and so there is less and less need for semi-skilled and of course unskilled labor. The garment sector has therefore filled a huge vacuum in terms of being a labor intensive industry which offers employment to unskilled and semi-skilled labor. But they're particularly interested in employing women because women are more easily exploited, but also because they perhaps take more easily to the kind of work that the garment sector needs. And these are rural first generation migrants, so they are not really eligible for even slightly higher service sector work, like working as in hotels or in the beauty sector or wellness or spas and so on and so forth, which need a slightly different profile. So the only sector that is open to them in services is domestic, and many prefer a factory environment to domestic service, although we are seeing a lot of crossing between garments and domestic.
Bengaluru has over 1,500 garment manufacturing units employing more than 500,000 people, predominantly women. As of December 2021, more than 400,000 garment workers in Karnataka were reportedly receiving wages below the legal minimum in over 1,000 factories since April 2020. Our study shows that despite working 10 to 15 years in the same factory, salaries remained below 11,000 rupees, forcing many women to supplement their income with other paid work. Nearly 93% had not signed an employment contract, and over 25% had not received an appointment letter.
The interstate migrants are in a much more vulnerable situation because of language problems. They are alienated in a different culture. They cannot easily adjust to the city because all they are really seeing is the hostels in which they put up and the factory. They're not really relating to the city as such because they can't afford to go to even a mall or a movie or so on and so forth. So it's a highly trapped existence for the interstate migrants.
In the factory, violence is systematized as an instrument of production. 68% of workers said their factory imposed time restrictions on toilet use. 66% experienced physical isolation as punishment. 61% had experienced physical abuse. 39% had experienced sexual harassment. The reality of their work life has meant garment workers don't want their children to take on factory jobs.
Obviously, many workers said that they wanted their children to be educated. They wanted them to at least have a college degree, unlike themselves. They aspire that their children learn English because English is attributed to better job prospects in the job market. They of course want them to get office jobs. A lot of the workers said that we want our children to work in an office with a computer and a desk, and we don't want them to work in factories where working conditions are very harsh and the work intensity is very high. They often said that they want their children to have respectable jobs.
After years of toil, most workers want to go back to their villages, to familiar surroundings, where cost of living is low compared to the city.
At the kind of income that they have had, even let's say for 20 to 25 years, although some have earned only intermittently, they cannot really afford to buy any place in the city. But the more important fact is that typical of migrants that we are seeing, in fact, all over the country, is that they retain, a small unit in the point of departure. So they retain a place. It might be just a small hut or a very small piece of land. They probably have some peripheral family members there. Some we found had left their parents or their parents-in-law or even their husbands back there, and they have sent money for reconstructing the house, etc. With the plan is to return. This is, I would say, the most robust representation that a woman plans. She keeps a foothold in the village, and when she's retired, she returns. However, we found several who were in very, very dire straits in the city, in the sense that they had no one to take care of them. Their husbands had died, their children had moved off. There's very high rate of delinquent children in this sector. So they really had no one, and often they were too old and too sick to take care of themselves. So the village acts as a retreat, as a kind of a place of care in a situation like this. To work in these factories, to create surplus value, and then when they can no longer work, you have not provided them with enough economic wherewithal to stay in the city, and in the natural course of things, they are swept back into the rural areas.
8:40 में निकलती हूँ, भाग के जाके, क्योंकि ना मेरा कुछ लेट से पहुँचूंगी तो गेट का बाहर अंदर रख देगा, पीएम सर आएगा, ज़्यादा गाली देगा। नहीं, बेंगलोर पे नहीं रहना है, घर ही जाना है। बेंगलोर पे ज़्यादा दिन रह गया, इसलिए मम्मी पापा के साथ कभी इतना छोटा सा आया है बेंगलोर पे।
The migration story.